Hey, so I just want to quickly run through some of the things that came up for me when I was reading chapter 4 again this morning in preparation for making the video to share with all of you. And I was rereading in my journaling Book of Mormon because I wanted to mark it up. And as I was reading it, I was just trying to think about if I was reading this chapter from the point of view of how trying to get insight or personal revelation, what are the biggest pieces of advice that one can get about living in a way that we really fulfill our purpose, fulfill what we've come here to do, lead a good life, lead a life that's meaningful, not just for us, but for other people as well. I marked up the pieces that I think are kind of relevant to this way of looking at things, and I'm going to share them with you. 1. Let us go up again unto Jerusalem. Now we know in the previous couple of chapters that Nephi and his brothers have already gone once to meet Laban, and he has thrown them out. And he has threatened to kill them and threatened to kill Laban, and they've come back, right? And they're feeling really sorrowful because they think they won't be able to do what God had asked them to do. But so Nephi tells his brothers, let's go up again into Jerusalem. So pretty much what he's saying is, let's try again. If God has commanded us to do this, we have to try and try again and again and again until we succeed, because eventually we will succeed. If he's told us to do this, he knows we can do it. He knows that there's a way to do it. So we have to keep trying it till we actually succeed. So let's go up again into Jerusalem. And the second point, let us be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord. For behold, he is mightier than all the earth. Again, kind of ties into the first sentence. Let us be faithful in keeping God's commandments. He's told us to do something. Let us be faithful and try and keep that commandment that he's given us, to do what he's asked us to do. Because he is mightier than anybody else. So he knows he's created a way, or he will create a way, where we can actually achieve what he wants us to do. The next piece, which is really interesting and I think is so relevant to living our lives in general, is he says, let us be strong like unto Moses, for he truly spake unto the waters of the Red Sea, and they divided hither and thither. And our fathers came through out of captivity onto dry ground, and the armies of Pharaoh did not follow and were drowned in the waters of the Red Sea. Now, when you look at just the first part of this, let us be strong like unto Moses, for he truly spake unto the waters of the Red Sea, and they divided hither and thither. What Nephi is saying here is that it is faith in God's power that allowed Moses to speak in such a convincing and strong and confident way, that through that faith, he was actually able to create a situation where the waters of the sea parted for the Israelites to go through. And then he was able, with access to God's help and power again, through his faith, to bring the waters back to close over the Egyptian army. And the next one is, the Lord is able to deliver us. Everything in this passage that we've read so far is all about trust the Lord. He has so much power. Even if we think we can't do it, we can, because all one has to do is to have faith in him. Faith that he will find a solution to help us through it. And then in verse 6, I was led by spirit, not knowing beforehand the things that I should do. When God tells us to do something, we may not normally know how to do it. But don't overthink it. Don't worry about it. God always has a plan. He already knows how to put things in your path to make it achievable for you. But you have to take that first step. You have to trust him enough to take those first steps. Allow yourself to stay attentive to the directions and the guidance of Spirit, which will guide you and lead you into the paths that God wants you to go. Nevertheless, I went forth. So even not knowing where he needed to go, Nephi still trusted that he would be led by God bit by bit, even though he couldn't see the whole picture, that God would lead him to the point where he can do what he wants him to do. And then in verse number 10, I was constrained by the Spirit that I should kill Laban. But I said in my heart, never have I done this before, and I don't want to do it. So again, Nephi was told by the Spirit to kill Laban. God knew that Nephi would not find it easy to do this. You see, he repeats it over and over again. Spirit repeats it to Nephi 3 times before Nephi actually is convinced that he has to do this. God works through the powers of repetition sometimes. He tells you over and over again in simple language to do this. Do this. He puts an idea in your head. He puts a feeling in your heart. He puts situations in your way. And all these are signs from him. This is what I want you to do. And if you do it, you will get to the point that you need to get to. And the Spirit said unto me again, Behold, the Lord had delivered him into thy hands. And I knew that the Lord had delivered Laban into my hands for this cause, that I might obtain the records according to his commandments. And Nephi knew, he had a witness of the reason why God wanted him to do what he had to do, to kill Laban. And it was only after all this, after God's repetition, showing him over and over again, and putting the thought in his head, that Nephi knew that he had to do this. Now, how often does God speak to us, prompt us? How often does Spirit speak to us to remind us or tell us about what we need to do or what we should do, or about opportunities that might be coming up, or about things that we've done which are not right, that we need to correct? I mean, there's so many reasons and ways that Spirit speaks to us. How often do we actually pay attention to those and then follow up? God will tell us once, he'll tell us twice, he might tell us thrice. But after a point, if we don't pay attention to the whisperings or the nudgings or the insight that you get from Spirit, it stops coming. So pay attention the next time and see. Look at it and see. Ask for direction. Ask God where he wants us to go. Therefore, I did obey the voice of Spirit, and he killed Laban. In verse number 21, and he supposed me to be his master Laban, for he beheld the garments, and also the sword girded about my loins. The thing that came to me when I read this line was that most people see what they want to see. Even with us, we usually see what we want to see, or we see what we're thinking about in that particular moment. It's so important, right, to be consistent about the way we guide our thoughts and our feelings. Because we just react to situations around us. Very often we're reacting to the wrong thing. We're seeing it superficially on the surface. We're not really seeing the problem for what it is, and we're not seeing people for who they are. It's super important, and this again is a very relevant point. Verse number 32, and it came to pass that I spake with him, that if he would hearken unto my words, as the Lord liveth and I live, we would spare his life. Now, isn't this something that God is constantly trying to tell us to do? And to listen to him, to let him help you. Because that's the way that we truly save our lives, right? We save our eternal lives. We save our eternal happiness by listening to him, by listening and hearkening to him. Surely the Lord has commanded us to do this thing, and shall we not be diligent in keeping the commandments of the Lord? This is the last verse that I really marked in this as something that spoke out to me, particularly over and above everything else. And it's all again about commandments. God reminds us over and over again to keep his commandments, because that's what helps him help us. That's what gives him the ability to guide us, to lead us to a better space, to a better place for our eternal happiness.